I was chatting with another baseball mom. We were probably missing most of the game because we were just chatting. And she said that she was an introvert and she was reading a book on introversion. And I remember, like, I don't know if I interrupted her, but I was basically like, wait, hold the phone. You're an introvert? Like, but you're so friendly and you have so many friends and you're so social. And she was like one of those people that just had so many friends and was just so, I don't know, I just really looked up to her and I thought she was just like such an amazing person. And everything I had heard about introversion, it seemed to be more the negative, like, you're not good with people, you don't have social skills, all those things that are so not true. And so I always thought, why would I want to put that word introvert? Why would I want to attach that to my name if that's what it means, if that's what people think? So I fought it. But it's almost like this conversation with the baseball mom gave me permission, as cheesy as it sounds, to be like, oh, okay, she's an introvert. I can call myself an introvert too, because it wasn't this negative thing anymore.
Hello and welcome to episode 207 of the Quiet and Strong podcast, especially for introverts. I'm your host, David Hall, and the creator of quietandstrong.com. This is a weekly podcast dedicated to understanding the strengths and needs of introverts, along with strategies for success. Introversion is not something to fix, but to be embraced. Normally, we'll air each episode on a Monday. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite platform. Leave a review or a rating. That would mean a lot to me and help others find the show. Tell a friend about the podcast and help get the word out there that introversion is a beautiful thing. Nicole Kepic is a sales page copywriter with over 20 years of copywriting experience, previously writing for big brands like Kellogg's, Walmart, Frito-Lay, and Keurig. Today, she helps online coaches and creatives stand out from the crowd, attract their ideal clients, and sell their signature offers with fun, feel-good sales copy. Nicole is also the author of Don't Ask Me to Be Loud, the Introverted Girl's Guide to Online Business. In this fun, relatable book, she also shows you how you don't need to be the loudest or the boldest person on the internet to run a thriving and joyful and in-demand business. All right. Well, Nicole, welcome to the Quiet and Strong podcast. It's so good to have you on today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm also so glad that we connected on LinkedIn too, because I'd been ignoring LinkedIn for the past 15 years, and then it was nice to hop back on and meet new connections. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to get into your new book, but let's start with you. Like, tell us a little bit about yourself, your fellow introvert, your journey as an introvert to doing the work that you're doing now.
Sure. Yeah. So I am based just outside of Toronto in Canada. I am a copywriter for online business owners. 99% of them are women. I will say that, but I do have a couple token male clients. Yeah. So it's just writing website copy, sales page copy, email copy. But in terms of being an introvert, it definitely impacted the direction my career went and how I landed here. So if we go way back in time, I went to school for journalism because I loved writing. And at the time, it was kind of like if you liked writing, your guidance counselor said you could either be a journalist or you could be an English teacher. So I chose journalism. But I quickly realized that as an introvert, my personality, like I just wasn't cut out for the hard news journalism, or I didn't enjoy it. I didn't enjoy the aspect of racing to the scene and getting the scoop and, being aggressive and putting mics in people's faces. Like I know journalism is not just that, but that's what it felt like to me. And it just wasn't my vibe with being an introvert, even if I didn't know at the time that that's what it was called, introversion. So, long story short, I finished my journalism degree, but when all my friends were applying to journalism jobs at papers and TV studios, I decided to go a different route. I decided to apply for a copywriting job. So that's why I went in that direction. So, yeah, that's how I landed in copywriting. And that was over 20 years ago. So I've been doing this a long time. And yeah, it's funny because last week I was going through these bins in my basement storage and I found a report from my internship when I was in school. I was interning at this local paper. And at the end of the 6 weeks, the editor there, he wrote this report on my performance basically. And he said like, she's got great attitude. She's really hardworking. Her writing is good, especially for the human interest lifestyle pieces. But if she wants a career in hard news, she's going to have to be more assertive. She's going to have to be more aggressive and not so trusting of her sources, which I thought was funny. And he even said, like, she needs to lose the golly gee approach. And I read this and I was kind of offended, just last week when I was reading this. I'm like, that was so rude of him to say, but he was right. He was totally right. And so, yeah, even then I knew that just wasn't for me. So I think I landed where I needed to land.
Yeah, absolutely. And when did you put the name introvert to it all? And how did you have to go through a process of embracing it?
Yes, definitely. And it definitely wasn't back then, at the time in my early 20s when I was in that golly gee world. I didn't realize I was an introvert then. I understood my personality, but I didn't necessarily, I don't know if I'd ever heard the word introvert before or understand that label. I think it was more so in the last, maybe 8 to 10 years. I do remember a specific conversation that really changed my mind on the topic. And it was at a baseball tournament. My son plays baseball. And I was chatting with another baseball mom. We were probably missing most of the game because we were just chatting. And she said that she was an introvert and she was reading a book on introversion. And I remember, like, I don't know if I interrupted her, but I was basically like, wait, hold the phone. You're an introvert? Like, but you're so friendly and you have so many friends and you're so social.
Ugh.
And I just, and she was like one of those people that just had so many friends and was just so, I don't know, I just really looked up to her and I thought she was just like such an amazing person. And everything I had heard about introversion, it seemed to be more the negative, like you're not good with people, you don't have social skills, all those things that are so not true. And so I always thought, why would I want to put that word introvert? Why would I want to attach that to my name if that's what it means, if that's what people think? So I fought it. But it's almost like this conversation with the baseball mom gave me permission, as cheesy as it sounds, to be like, oh, okay, she's an introvert. I can call myself an introvert too, because it wasn't this negative thing anymore. So yeah, I definitely fought it in the beginning. And then through that conversation was like, yes, I can call myself an introvert. It's okay. I can be a proud introvert. But then along the way, I still had to, embrace it because there were certainly times where I thought, oh, it would just be easier if I was an extrovert. It would be easier to stand out in the online business world if I had more extrovert qualities. So it's a journey still, but for the most part, yes, 100% embracing the introvert vibe.
Yeah, and that's why we're talking today. There's somebody out there that may have just been inspired by your story that it's like, oh, yes, I am an introvert. And it's like not only we're embracing it, but we're realizing there's great strengths that come from it. It's not just something that we have to accept. It's like something that it's like, wow, I am a great thinker. I have a great imagination. All of these things that, make you a great writer, it's because you're a deep thinker, you know. But there's needs that come with it too. But yeah, and it's that we do plenty of myth busting, and you saw this person that seemed to be very social. Of course, introverts can be very social, you know, that kind of thing. What is a strength that you have because you're an introvert?
I would say, I mean, I would like to say that I'm a good listener. Hopefully that's the case. So that's probably one is that, I'm a good listener. I think because, especially when I'm with a group of people, I don't feel the need to dominate the conversation and jump in and be the loudest person in the room. So I think I'm content to kind of sit back and listen. And especially one-on-one, if I'm with somebody, I try to be really conscious of letting them speak and tell their story. And I'm really interested, genuinely interested in what they have to say. So that's probably the biggest one. And, paired with that would be empathy. So, just trying to understand where someone's at, even if I haven't lived their experiences myself. And this certainly comes in handy when I'm writing, because a lot of writing, copywriting is empathizing with your readers, empathizing with their pain points, even if you haven't experienced them themselves. So yeah, listening and empathy tied tied in together.
Yeah, that's great. So, you were kind of figuring out that you were an introvert and, working for other people. How did you decide to strike out on your own?
Yeah, it was a journey. It was certainly not an overnight leap. So like I said, I've been copywriting for over 20 years. So I went into the corporate world as a senior copywriter. Well, not as a senior. I started as a junior copywriter, let's be clear, and then moved up to senior copywriter. But basically, my whole corporate career was being a senior copywriter at creative agencies or different corporate companies. But somewhere along the way, I had started my own freelance writing business on the side. I think it was probably in between jobs. Just started writing on the side for a couple of clients. And then just over the years, over about 10 years, like I said, this was not a quick jump. It just grew and grew on the side, my freelance writing business. And it got to the point where life was just so busy. So I suddenly had this freelance business that was taking up all my nights and weekends. And then I had a 9 to 5 job where I was commuting at least an hour each way and then coming home and doing assignments. And I just got to this point. And then, of course, like I said, my son's in baseball. He was in hockey at the time. We live in Canada. So that's a thing. Life was just really busy. And I got to the point of like, okay, something here has to go. And in the beginning, when I started my side hustle, it was never the dream to do it full time. It was just kind of like, oh, extra trip money. But then as it grew, it became more clear to me that this could be a thing. This could actually be a thing for me. So, I started having conversations with the husband, like, hey, what do you think of this? If I quit my corporate job with great benefits and steady pay? And, those conversations were had. And then it wasn't until 2020 that I left corporate finally because I was like, okay, it's time. I've done my due diligence. I've set up systems and, it's time to do it. So I left my corporate job, which I actually liked. It wasn't this horror story of horrible bosses and horrible people. I really liked it. And that's probably what made me stay so long is because I liked it. But yes, I quit my corporate job in 2020. It wasn't even timed with COVID. It just happened to be that way. And then I, went full time with my business and started writing for online business owners.
Awesome. Did you have to make any changes in your mindset going from being an employee to now being your own boss, being a CEO and now an author?
Yes, 100%. And there was so much learning too. Like I felt like I'd been doing copywriting for so long and, I had side clients with my freelance business. So I at least had, the client experience aspect down pat, but then you switch to the online business world and suddenly it's like you feel like a newbie. There's so much to learn. There's so many things like, oh wait, I have to create lead magnets and build an email list and suddenly you're just in charge of so many things and it's not just you providing your service anymore. It's you doing the marketing, the accounting, like, it's everything, right? So that was a big thing, just all the learning involved. And I think also just the mindset of, when you're freelancing and an employee, you have that mindset of being at somebody else's beck and call, essentially. Like you are serving them, you are working for them. And then you switch to running your own company and you have to switch the mindset from that, employee mindset to the CEO mindset. So for me, that looked like, okay, I'm in charge of my time. I'm in charge of my energy. So if I'm feeling burnt out and overworked and I'm working all the time, that's my that's my fault. I can change that. Or maybe it was me understanding that I didn't have to accept every client. If somebody was like fire hosing me with red flags, I could listen to my gut and say, you know what, maybe this is not a good idea. Thank you, but no, thank you. Please find another copywriter. And, just making more of those high level decisions.
Yeah. So was it a good move for you?
Absolutely. I mean, I will say that 2024, it felt a bit harder. I will say that just in the sense of, before I would post on Instagram and get so many more inquiries. And I think because I haven't fully embraced Reels, that hasn't been the case anymore. But yeah, I've been busy ever since I left my corporate job. I've always had steady work just because I think copywriting is what every business needs. But yeah, it's certainly like not always easy, lots of limiting beliefs, those kind of things that you have to work through as a business owner. So yeah.
How'd you work through those limiting beliefs?
It's a journey. Probably my biggest limiting belief was, when I first went from corporate to the online business world, I worried, how am I going to stand out? Like, you hop on Instagram and you see that there are 10 billion other copywriters. So, a part of me thought, how, especially as an introvert, how am I going to stand out against all these other people? Me, the quiet, unassuming copywriter, compared to these people with louder, bolder personalities. So that was a big one. But then I just had to trust that, there will always be people that resonate with my personality, my style. my work especially too. So you just have to trust that the right people will find you, and that has certainly been the case.
I think that's so key to these conversations. It's you don't have to be all things to all people, and you can't be. That's something that I definitely have learned. But there are people that need your particular gifts and strengths, and they're really going to resonate with you. And there's going to be people that don't. And sometimes that's hard to come to terms with and accept. Hey, wait, everybody doesn't resonate with me. No, there are people that need you, and there are people that need somebody else.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, I don't know if it's an introvert quality or just, a quality I have is being a people pleaser. It's like, yeah, I want everyone to like me. So if people don't like me, it hurts the heart a little bit. But you're so right. You can't please everyone, just like you can't serve everyone. So you shouldn't have a million different services trying to please everyone. You should really hone in on a few or just one core service so that you can really be strong in that service.
Yeah, yeah, that's just important to remember. Let's talk about your new book. Don't Ask Me to Be Loud, The Introverted Girl's Guide to Online Business. Tell us
Yes.
about that.
Yeah, so I mean, I've always wanted to write a book ever since I was young. I remember being in my 20s. I didn't know what I wanted to write about. I just knew I wanted to be an author. And I remember being in my early 20s thinking, I better write a book fast. I need to write a book before I'm 30 because when I'm 30, I will be old and I don't want an old picture of me on the back of a book,
Uh,
which I think is so funny now that I'm kind of mid to late 40s and finally writing a book. But yeah, it's basically my experience as an online business owner, and of course, targeted, not targeted, but for my readers, like showing them all the lessons I've learned, some how-tos, and lots of stories throughout. But basically, the premise is that you don't have to be the loudest person on the internet to have a thriving, joyful, in-demand business. You don't have to be loud and bold. You can be an introvert and have a really successful business. So as a copywriter, I thought about making the book just about copywriting, but I just wanted it to be more holistic than that. So there's a big section on copywriting, for sure. There's a big chapter on it, but I also talk about branding, visibility, marketing, pricing, selling, client boundaries, all of those things that go into running a business, all through the lens of an introvert for introverts.
yeah, that's amazing. And that's a lot of what I do on this podcast. It's like we can be wildly successful, but in an authentic way, that's what's really going to work. And so we have people like yourself on the show that have learned to embrace their introverted gifts and approach it in their way for success. Because, we can be successful in anything, but me giving a speech and my extroverted friend giving a speech, we're probably going to prepare in a different way. And we're probably going to do that whole thing in a different way. And we're going to succeed differently. But, we can be great leaders, we can be great public speakers, but embracing ourselves and not trying to be something that we're not. Because I definitely tried that. It didn't work very well.
Yeah, it doesn't work. And I find it's not enjoyable, right? When you're trying to be somebody else, somebody you're not, it just feels hard and it's not enjoyable. So there's so many ways to do things. So why choose the ways that are not feeling aligned to what you enjoy? You might as well just be yourself and have more fun doing it.
Yeah, yeah. We talk about the traditional networking event, and the extrovert's going to bounce from person to person. And not only do I not enjoy that, it's not going to be effective for me. But if I could have a couple good conversations, that's what's going to work for me, to have a goal and meet my goal and not try to do things in the traditional way. That's what's going to work, not yeah, you don't enjoy it and it's not effective.
Yeah, for sure. And I like how you've said before that certain activities aren't necessarily extroverted or introverted. You just approach them in different ways.
Yeah.
So, like you said, networking, I would have before thought, okay, that's an extroverted activity. No, you can network as an introvert, but like you said, you're going to approach it a different way and just have a different take on
Yeah, yeah. I love that. Thank you for bringing that up because it's
it.
like it drives me crazy because I think that I think everybody has gifts. Introverts, extroverts, we all have gifts. And when you start to call things extroverted, you're kind of like you're kind of like discounting our gifts because, like I said, I enjoy podcasting. I needed to prepare, we talked about some things we might, questions ahead of time. But I love this. I'm not like pretending to be an extrovert to do this podcast. I'm doing it in my way and I'm enjoying it, but I'm not an extrovert because I'm doing it. I'm not an extrovert because I give a speech. So thank you for saying that. That's really important. We need to really say, hey, you know what? Everybody has gifts. We all are great in our own ways, but don't ask me to be something I'm not.
Exactly. Yeah, it was funny because, just podcasting, like you said, some people would consider that an extroverted activity. And I was even talking to my mom last week and I mentioned this podcast interview. And she said, "Oh my gosh, that would just make me so nervous. I can't believe you could do that." I said, "No, mom, it's fine. It's a one-to-one conversation. We're even chatting ahead of time. So it's fine. Don't worry about me."
Yeah, that's great. And you know what? That's the thing. We do like one-on-one conversations. We do like to connect with people, deeply. As you work with your clients, you really enjoy that. You enjoy that connection and really getting at what do they need, It's just you may not enjoy, going back to the traditional networking event and just bouncing around from person to person. But the connection is really important to you and to us as introverts. And there's so many myths out there. We're definitely going to bust some of those today.
Yeah, I think that one-to-one is really important too, and it can really foster longer, deeper connections with clients. So instead of just having a one-off job with your client, if you take the time and do that one-to-one and really build that relationship, they will be more likely to come back to you for more work because, you're not just something on their schedule to be done and then, out the door. You want to have a long and lasting relationship with them.
Yeah, absolutely. So all the things we're talking about, really, I love the title of your book, Don't Ask Me to Be Loud. It's like, yeah, let me be my authentic self. Let me, you be your authentic self. Let me be my authentic self, and great things are going to come of that. But I love your title.
Oh, perfect. Because it's funny when I ran it by my book coach at first, I think she was kind of like humming and hawing because she wanted a title that was a bit more SEO friendly, as in, people are going to go to Amazon and type in specific words. So I think she really wanted the word introvert in the title or business. Basically, she wanted my subtitle as my title. But then when I polled my audience, they really resonated with that title because the history or the backstory behind that title is that so often, especially in the corporate world, I would have bosses, well-meaning bosses, who would say to me, "You have such great ideas. You just need to be louder. You need to speak up more. You need to be bolder." And like I said, they were, they had my best intentions at heart and they wanted the best for me. But it always felt like, oh, seriously? Like, why do I have to change? Why can't my writing just speak for itself? Or why can't my work speak for itself? It always felt like I had to change my personality if I wanted to succeed in business. So I always wanted to say, like, stop asking me to be louder. Please just let me be me. So that is the premise of the title. And like I said, when I polled my audience, some of the people said, yes, that really resonates with me because in so many ways I was told to be louder too, or to be this or that when I just wanted to be myself. So that's kind of the premise. With that said, in the book, I do talk a bit about breaking out of your comfort zone. So the book is all about being who you are, embracing your introversion, not having to change, in a big way, but being open to tiny changes, being open to a bit of reinvention so you're not just stuck. You're willing to try things a bit out of your comfort zone so that you can feel the pride and accomplishment of succeeding at something new. You're not just staying stuck.
Yeah. And as an introvert, most introverts have gone through that starting in school, like, speak up more, all of that. And it's really, like you're saying, we can absolutely get out of our comfort zones. And one thing that I've learned in all of this is I I used to be shy. I used to lack confidence when I didn't understand my introversion. When I didn't understand that I was a deep thinker, that I most of the time am gonna think and then speak. When I didn't understand all that, I was definitely lack confidence. Now I'm not shy. I don't lack confidence, but I also realize that I'm gonna do more thinking than my extroverted friend. and they're going to say more words than me in general, no matter how confident I am, because that's their process. They think out loud most of the time. And it's just it's really understanding all of that and helping people understand that too. It's like, hey, you know what? I'm going to share my ideas, but I'm going to think through them carefully, and that's what's good about me. So, yeah. So let's talk a little bit more about getting out of your comfort zone. What's your take on that? How do you do that?
Yeah, honestly, I just I try not to, I don't know. I've got two takes on it basically. So on the one hand, like I said, I feel like you should step out of your comfort zone a bit because if you don't, like I said, you'll be stuck and you're never going to experience that joy of, wow, I just tried something different. I liked it. I was good at it. I'm going to do this again. You're never going to experience that if you don't, try to step out of your comfort zone. But then on the other hand, I think if your gut is really telling you like you will not enjoy this and it's so far removed from your natural inherent gifts, so far removed from your introversion, then it's okay to say no. It's okay to say, you know what, this isn't for me. Life's too short to do things that you hate. So so yeah, I've got two different opposing views on that and it's kind of like finding, the in between, the stretch limit, but yeah, stretch a bit, but not so much where you're like, this is not for me. Why am I doing this? I'm pretending to be somebody I'm not. So,
Oh, I don't think those are opposing at all. I love that because there are things that's like, yeah, that's not for me, and that's okay to say. But there's things that you're having scary thoughts about, and you can do that thing, and you just have to challenge those thoughts so you don't have to get out of your comfort zone the next time. So you're like, you know what? I did that. It was great. And I can do that again. Maybe, we're very reflective as introverts. We can think, how do I, how would I do that next time? But we're really changing our comfort zone, right? But I love that. There's things that, yeah, that's not for me. That's a good way to put it.
well, thank you. I think it's also recognizing imposter syndrome too. So sometimes an idea will come to me, like, say, the first time I got invited to a podcast interview a few years ago, my instant thought was, no, this is scary. I don't want to do this. That was my instant thought. And then at the time, I was working with a business coach. I think it was the first coach I was working with. And she had this expression of like, always think of future you. What would future you do? What would future you say? And future you was, the person that was thriving and confident and, just like really excelling at business. And I remember thinking, oh, what would future Nicole do? And I was again kind of mildly annoyed. Like, why do I have to think of future Nicole? Like, current Nicole does not want to do this. And then I thought, okay, future Nicole would say yes. She would say yes. So even though I was like, I hate the sound of my voice, what if I don't have anything interesting to say? I said yes to that podcast interview and it was easy, it was fun. I enjoyed it. And since then, I've done more podcast interviews. So had I said no to that podcast interview, who knows? Maybe I wouldn't have, we might not be talking right now because I would have let imposter syndrome get in the way.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. I have a similar story, my very first podcast. Don't go back and watch that, but it was a really good experience. It was just like, wow, I do enjoy this. And then, soon after I started my own, I'm like, yeah, this is something I can do as well. And I'm really I enjoy sharing ideas, also having great conversations. And yeah, then that was coming from stepping out a little bit, but changing, So the next time, I definitely I don't get nervous anymore. It's really great. Whether it's a podcast or a speech, it's for the most part, I just know how I need to prepare and I know, I got to manage my energy a little bit and then I don't get nervous, which is a lot different from, my previous younger self.
Yeah, that's amazing. And you've probably met such interesting people along the way. And if for whatever reason it stops working for you, you can always shut it down. Like you don't have to be tied to a decision forever. So, yeah, that's
Right.
great.
Yeah, no, interest. Yeah, definitely. It's been a lot of fun and no plans to stop. So we also bust myths on this show, and I know you have one to bust for us. So do you think introverts are boring?
Oh, yes. No, the answer is no. Yes is not the answer. Introverts are not boring. Let me be clear. I get so bothered by that when people say, oh, introverts are boring. Not that anyone has said that to my face, but I feel like that is the going, thoughts out there. I think that one just really hit home with me because that was a big myth that I believed, especially like I said, when I quit corporate, hopped on Instagram and started advertising my business. I thought, oh my gosh, I'm not going to stand out because I'm boring. I'm not exciting. I'm just Nicole, the copywriter. And, I worried that it would hold me back compared to other people who are more out there and bolder. But yeah, I mean, introverts to me are very interesting, great conversationalists, funny, humorous, witty, all the things. So yes, I will put a stake in the ground forever and say introverts are not boring. Most of the time, it's just us thinking we're boring when we're not.
Yeah. And I promise it's not boring in our heads. I promise you that.
Yeah.
Generally, we have some great imaginations. But yeah, and that's the other thing. It's like everybody has their own idea of what's fun, right? And that's the thing is you need to not let people tell you what you think is fun. You need to do those things that you want to do and enjoy whatever it is. And I'm sure there's a wide range of what people like, but sometimes we get, this is what's fun, this is what you need to enjoy, and it's just not the
Mm.
case, right?
Yeah, that can be very judgy, right? We shouldn't decide what's fun for other people.
Yeah. So how do you bring how do you bring that into your work as a copywriter? How do you put that fun and playfulness, personality into your copy, helping other people do that? Again, being authentic.
Yeah, well, that's a good question because that's a big struggle with a lot of my clients. They come to me, and one of their struggles is I feel like my copy's boring. It's just kind of blah. Like I feel like I'm an interesting person or I have all these interesting ideas, but then when I sit down to write, it just comes out very corporate or very just dry, I guess, right? And so they often struggle to infuse personality into their copy. And so there's so many different ways you can do that. Probably the biggest way is just writing really conversationally. So, you're writing as you would speak as a human, not a robot, not, super corporate-y, super jargony. You're just writing as a person, as if you were talking to a friend. So that's probably the biggest thing. And then inserting humor. And it doesn't have to be like roll on the ground laughing kind of humor. It can just be like, slices of life that make your readers nod along and smile and be like, oh, yeah, that is so me. I hate it when that happens, or, I've been there, done that. So just incorporating some humor, conversationalism, using words that you would use in everyday life, using words that your readers would use, injecting those. So again, it just comes across as more human.
Yeah. What would you say is the biggest challenge that your clients have when they're doing their writing?
Yeah, I mean, my clients usually come to me. It boils down to three things. They either don't have the time, the desire, or the expertise to write their copy. So time, they're established business owners, they're busy. Some of them are even great writers. I've written for authors before, which made me a bit nervous, but I'm like, okay, they just don't have the time. Then there's other people who don't have the desire. They they hate copywriting like I hate folding laundry. They would rather do anything else than write their own copy. And then the expertise, that's a big one. So a lot of clients will say, like, I just don't know how to sell. Selling is a big one. They don't know how to approach that because obviously we're all here running businesses, not hobbies. So they want their words to sell in a way that's not overly salesy. So that's the biggest one I would say because I mean, it's hard. Your copy has to do so many things for you. It has to engage your readers, it has to entertain them, it has to inspire them, empower them, and it has to build urgency too, so that they decide, okay, I want to take that next step and buy the thing instead of, yeah, maybe later, I'll just hold off for now. So yeah, your copy has some big work to do.
Yeah. And tell us about selling. Like, what is your view on selling? You talk about selling with empathy and authority versus pressure and fear.
Yeah, I am not a fan. Like, who's really a fan of copy that sells with pressure and fear, those fear
Right, I'm
tactics?
not.
Like, I don't know anybody who is. I think some people just do it unknowingly. They come across too strong in their copy. They don't even realize they're doing it. But yeah, I mean, empathy is really just, relating to your readers, relating to their current situation, like where they are now, what they're struggling with, what they really want, and what's standing in their way. And most of all, how is that making them feel? So, are they feeling like I'm so behind, I just can't get ahead, I wish I could be further ahead? Like all of those things you're empathizing with, and then only then are you presenting your solution as a way for them to, get to where they want to be. So you're not going to go in right away and say, hey, I have this thing, buy it now. You're first going to appeal to your readers, empathize with your readers, and then offer your solution. And then, of course, go into more detail of how your solution can help and how it will make them feel, like you go into more detail. But first empathize, then introduce your solution. And then the authority piece comes in because, it's one thing to empathize with your readers and say, hey, I know how you're feeling, I get it. But then at a certain point, they'll think, okay, you get me, you understand me, but can you help me? Do you have the experience, the expertise to help me? Because everything I've done before has not worked. I need a professional to come in and support me. So that's when, you talk about your experience, your credentials, maybe case studies with other clients, but, you're assuring them that you have what it takes to help them get to where they haven't been able to get on their own.
Yeah. And you've definitely talked about, yourself and struggles that you've had with marketing or being on social media. What advice do you have for the introvert business owner and social media?
Yeah, I mean, really simple advice of choose what you enjoy. If you hate something, like if you hate the idea of going on lives on Instagram, I don't know, my advice is just don't do it. There are so many other ways that you can market your business because if you hate it, you're not going to do it. You're not going to feel the most like you. So, yeah, I would just say be choosy about which marketing activities, of course, work, but work for your personality too. So for me, yes, I'm on Instagram, social media. So I have a presence there. I enjoy certain aspects of it. But for me, email has been the biggest driver of my business. And, I really enjoy it because it feels like a one-to-one conversation. Even though I'm sending an email out, it's going to more than one person. I'm writing it as if it's just to one other person. And I've been able to build a community there of people who are so supportive, who reply to my emails and are saying, "Oh, I can't wait for your book." And, it feels really close knit, even though, it's not just one or two people on my list, but it feels that way because of just the relationship we've built.
Yeah. And in all of this copywriting, what role does storytelling play? Like, how can we be great storytellers?
Oh, yes. I mean, I could say so much about storytelling and marketing. I mean, I'm a big fan of it for so many reasons. In terms of sales copy, storytelling is good because again, you're not just jumping in and saying, "Hey, I have this thing, buy it." You have a lead in. You're introducing a story first, a character, a setting, a plot, and then you're going into the thing. So it's kind of serving the purpose of a lead in. Stories, to me, probably the biggest thing is that stories make you more memorable. So I know there's science behind it. I don't ask me to quote the science behind it, but really like stories just have such sticking power. So people are more apt to remember you, remember your services. And so the next time that they need a service that you provide, you are going to be top of mind. And then, other things too. Stories make people feel like they know you more, they trust you more. And again, when it comes time for purchasing, not that you're telling a story just for that reason, but they will feel like they know you better and trust you more. And so when they're ready to purchase, they may come to you. So, I mean, the other thing I could say too is that stories are, they make you more ownable, if that's the right word. The way to describe it is when I was writing my book, I remember thinking, okay, I want to deliver lots of, practical advice, some how-tos, marketing, copywriting, pricing, selling, all those things. But a lot of that stuff can be Googled, right? Like a lot of it can be found online. So I wanted to inject lots of stories so that nobody else could write the same book that I wrote. Like, yes, my perspective would be different no matter what, but those stories especially would make it ownable and unique to me. Nobody else would have the same childhood stories or business stories or life stories that I did. So by very virtue of that, my book would be different from somebody else's, which was kind of my goal. I didn't want it to be just like all about Nicole. I want it to be more about my readers, but I still wanted to infuse some stories here and there. So it would be more specific to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we're built on stories as human beings. We resonate with stories, that great movie that you love, it's a story, and it's very important. But I think sometimes that gets lost, and that's important for introverts to remember is they have great stories to tell. And no matter what you're doing, whether it's marketing or copywriting, that you need to infuse your story, just like you said, into your work.
Yeah, and that's another thing too. People will often think, well, I don't have these big epic stories. And I'll often say, especially for email, it doesn't have to be that way. You can have a story about your experience going through the Starbucks drive-through this morning or like something so simple. And when I think of some of my, I don't want to say best emails, but emails that were most well received or had the most replies, the stories were just so simple, like such simple slices of life, like a story at my hairdresser's or a story with my grandpa, like the simplest things that are not like wild and crazy adventures, but they just resonate because they're more relatable, they're more human. So don't hold back on stories thinking you need this big epic story. You can just use these tiny slices of life.
Yeah, that's such a great point. So, Nicole, we've talked about the strengths of introverts, some needs of introverts. We busted a couple myths, and definitely you've talked about your strategies for success, especially in copywriting, how you've leaned into your introverted gifts. Another big thing is that, we do need some alone time as introverts. And I don't like the definition when people say that's all that it is, and it's people like, oh, introverts, it's how you get your energy, you know. I'm like, yes, that's part of it. But also, like we've been talking about, there's also great strengths, and we don't want to discount those, we have these great strengths. But with those strengths comes some needs. We do need some time alone. And it's not just about recharging. Recharging is very important. Like, you know what? I probably will take a little break after we're done here. I've really enjoyed it, but I'm probably going to take a little break. But we also need time to do lots of things, to create, to think, to do some planning. How have you learned to get your alone time and also recharge when you need to as an introvert?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, definitely having pockets of alone time for sure. I recently had a guest over for the weekend and he stayed from Saturday morning till Monday morning and it was full on entertaining and I just felt like yeah, that really that was painful because I couldn't escape even just for 10 minutes to read. That's all I wanted to do was to escape for 10 minutes. So yeah, so it's inserting those pockets of time in my schedule. Again, as like I said before, as the CEO of your business, you are in charge of your schedule. So yeah, just making sure you have the time to recharge when you need it. For me, that also looks like only booking client calls on certain days versus having them every day, and feeling like, oh, I've got calls every day. So I will usually block them on certain days, or I'll have a maximum number of calls per day so that it's not like, oh, I've opened up my calendar and I have 10 calls today. Like that would just be exhausting. And then, even like I said, just being picky about clients. And I don't say that to be exclusive or anything, but if I get the sense that a client is going to suck my soul and my energy, then I will say no to that client because, I want somebody who's kind of going to fuel me versus drain all of my energy. So little things like that. And then even back end systems in my business, like instead of doing everything manually, like I used to do before, like sending manual onboarding emails or invoicing emails. Like now I use Dubsado. So I will write those emails in advance and everything's kind of automated. So things like that help too. So it allows me to spend more of my time elsewhere versus crafting those. So yeah, just like little tactical things, but they can really help.
Awesome. This has been a great conversation, Nicole. I've really enjoyed it. Is there anything else you want to add?
No, in terms of introversion, I guess the only thing I would add that we've kind of touched on already is, you know, to try not to envy extroverts so much. I mean, I love extroverts. I just want to put that on record that I love extroverts. I have lots of extrovert friends and, some family members and but I think I personally spent too much time and energy in the past thinking, oh, life would be easier if I was an extrovert, or people would like me more if I was an extrovert. Like I wasted so much time thinking that when really, I should have been embracing my introverted quality so much sooner. So, and who knows, maybe extroverts think the same way about introverts sometimes, like, oh, I really like her calm nature or something. So, I think again, it's just, recognizing the gifts that we each have, understanding that we each have different gifts and really appreciating those gifts.
Yeah, well said. Where can
Thank
people find out
you.
more about you, your book, and the work that you do?
Well, they can go to my website, NicoleKepic.com. So I will share the links with you, but yeah, that's my first and last name. And then on Instagram, I'm at NK Copywriting, also back on LinkedIn. And yeah, I mean, as we're conducting this interview or this conversation, my book is not yet out in the world, but it will be by the time this airs. So I will share that link too.
Yeah, looking forward to checking it out.
Thank you.
All right, thanks
Hopefully it's
again.
not just my mom reading it.
Yeah, right. Thanks again, Nicole.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate you. I hope you take the time to explore other episodes and learn from other amazing guests. Remember, if you're interested in getting to know yourself better, there is now a free Type Finder personality assessment on the Quiet and Strong website. This free assessment will give you a brief report, including the four-letter Myers-Briggs code. I'll add a link in the show notes. And I'd love to connect with you. Reach out at david@quietandstrong.com or check out the quietandstrong.com website, which includes blog posts and links to social media for Quiet and Strong and much more. Send me topics or guests you would like to see on the show. So many great things about being an introvert, and so we need those to be understood. Get to know your introverted strengths and needs and be strong.